The President of the United States announces today that he is going to pardon Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh, of course, has been a guest on the program. I'm friendly with Dinesh, so full disclosure on that. Dinesh was basically railroaded back during the Obama administration. He was in the middle of making an anti-Obama documentary, and it was revealed that Dinesh D'Souza had engaged in the process of straw donation. So basically, there's a woman named Wendy Long who is running for Senate, and Dinesh wanted to give $20,000 to her. He couldn't. He could only give $5,000 to her. So a bunch of people gave $5,000 to Wendy Long, and then Dinesh D'Souza reimbursed them. Right? He acknowledged this in court. He pled guilty in court, and he was sentenced to a certain amount of prison time. Now, the reason that this isn't just a case of somebody doing something wrong and going to jail is because the vast majority of cases like this end with a fine. The vast majority of cases like this do not end with actual prosecution to the point where somebody goes to jail. And it seems a little coincidental that Dinesh D'Souza was making anti-Obama documentaries at just about the time that the Obama DOJ decided it was necessary that Dinesh D'Souza go to jail. Well, President Trump responded today by saying that he is going to pardon Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh already served his time, obviously. Yeah, here's my generalized opinion on this. I do not believe the president should have pardon power, just not Trump, any president. I think it's very silly that the Constitution has pardon power for the president, that governors have pardon power. I think it's really dumb, specifically because either you believe the criminal justice system works or you believe it doesn't. And having one guy who is sort of like a Cadi sitting under a tree ruling as to whether people ought to be spared the penalties of their crimes, that seems to me rather dictatorial and monarchic. It doesn't have a lot to do with the balance of powers, checks and balances of a functioning republic. I don't like the power generally, but if you're going to use the power, you have to use it very sparingly, and you ought to use the power. In this particular case, I would have thought that it would be more of a commutation situation. So there's a difference in pardon power between pardoning someone and commuting their sentence. If you pardon somebody, then their crime goes away. It's off the books. It's as though they never committed the crime in the first place. If you commute somebody's sentence, then if they were about to serve time, they no longer have to serve time. So right now, there's a serious call to give commutation to this guy who spent 21 years in prison and then was allowed out of prison. And then it turns out that the system got it wrong and he's already rebuilt his life and they're going to send him back to prison. There's a strong call by some people, like friends of mine, like Dana Perino, that this guy should have his sentence commuted. I agree with that. He shouldn't be pardoned because he did commit the crime. Well, in this particular case, Dinesh committed the crime. Is a pardon appropriate? I'm not sure that a pardon is appropriate. I think a commutation would have been appropriate, but he already served his time. Here's where a pardon is appropriate, however. Dinesh is no longer allowed to vote. Dinesh obviously cannot get loans very easily. It's hard for him to get credit cards. Like, there are certain penalties that attach to being a felon, and Dinesh is a convicted felon, which means that he couldn't have done any of those things. Well, Trump is wiping all of that off the books. Again, do I think the pardon would have been the best solution here? I think commutation would have if the timing had been right. But do I find this to be a wild miscarriage of justice? I do not. Now, is it political? Of course it's political, right? Dinesh is on President Trump's side. He's been a very strong advocate for President Trump. If Dinesh D'Souza were on the left, I don't think they'd be talking pardon today. But this is unfortunately how pardon power works. Okay, this has been true for Clinton. It was true of Obama. There are a lot of people who receive pardons and clemency specifically because of their politics. Chelsea Manning would still be in prison if it were not for the fact that Chelsea Manning is a wild leftist who is transgender. Barack Obama let Chelsea Manning out of prison specifically because of those factors. So to pretend that the pardon power has not already been used for innately political purposes would be to ignore the truth of the situation. So while you hear the left complaining a lot about the Dinesh pardon today, I don't buy the outrage. I don't know that it's the greatest move in the world, but I also don't think that it's unjustified. And I think that the idea that Dinesh ever went to jail for this is insane.